Trump's border czar Tom Homan just held a press conference in Minneapolis and announced that the Operation Metro Surge, the massive federal immigration crackdown that has terrorized this city for weeks, is ending.
With that, and success that has been made arresting public safety threats and other priorities since this surge operation began, as well as the unprecedented levels of coordination we have obtained from state officials and local law enforcement, I have proposed, and President Trump has concurred, that this surge operation conclude. A significant drawdown has already been underway this week and will continue through the next week. We have a lot of work to do across this country to remove public safety risk who shouldn't even be in this country, and to deliver on President Trump's promise for strong border security and mass deportation. Law enforcement officers drawing down from this surge operation will either return to the duty stations or be assigned elsewhere to achieve just that.
They're pulling out after 2 American citizens were shot and killed, after women were dragged through the streets by their hair, after a 6-year-old with stage 4 cancer was deported. They're done. They're leaving. And the way they're framing this is absolutely unbelievable. Homan stood at the podium and said, and I quote, "I don't want to see any more bloodshed." Bro, you caused the bloodshed. Your agents caused this bloodshed. You don't get to show up, terrorize a city for weeks, kill people, and then act like you're the peacemaker when you leave. That's not how it works. So here's the timeline. Before this operation started, there were about 150 federal immigration agents in Minnesota. That's the normal number. Then Trump launched the Operation Metro Surge and flooded the state with the thousands of agents. At the peak, there were roughly 2,700 federal officers in Minneapolis. And what happened next is what happens every single time you militarize a community. On January 7th, Rennie Good. On January 24th, Alex Brady. And now, weeks later, after all that, Homan walks up to a podium and says it's over. He says, I have proposed, and President Trump has concurred that this surge operation conclude. He says they are doing a significant drawdown starting next week, and he frames it like he's doing the city a favor. And what he said about all these, the American people got killed.
There were some issues here, and we addressed those issues. But I'm not going to sit here and say anybody did anything wrong and that, they were unprofessional. I'm going to say there were some issues here. We fixed those issues. We've had great success.
You don't fix anything. And he's saying this is a success for their community. Dude, 2 people are dead. Businesses were shut down. Schools were disrupted. Families were ripped apart. Women were dragged. A win for this community, huh? He's basically saying this. And we had great success. It's not normal. They lost the PR battle, I think. That's what I think. They lost the narrative, and every single day this operation continued, the stories got worse for them. The videos got more brutal, the public outrage grew louder, and Congress started demanding answers. The ICE chief got grilled at a hearing and couldn't defend any of it. And it became very clear, very quickly, that this operation was becoming a political disaster for Trump. So they pulled out, and now they're trying to call it a victory. Now, here's how the White House is spinning it. They're saying that there were at least 4,000 arrests connected to this operation. 4,000! Sounds like a big number, right? Sounds like they got all the bad guys. But remember what we learned from the ICE hearing 2 days ago. CBS News reported, using an internal DHS document, that less than 14% of ICE arrests nationwide had charges of convictions for violent criminal offenses. Less than 14%. So if you apply that the same ratio to these 4,000 arrests, that means roughly 3,400 of those people were not violent criminals. They weren't the gang members or something like that. They weren't even the public safety threats Homan keeps talking about. There were people living their lives. Now let's talk about the reaction, because the people of Minneapolis are not buying the spin. Mayor Jacob Frey put out a statement, and he did not mince words. He said, quote, "They thought they could break us, but a love for our neighbors and a resolve to endure can outlast an occupation. He called it an occupation. The mayor of an American city just called a federal law enforcement operation an occupation. And he called the people who resisted it patriots of Minneapolis. He also said the operation has been catastrophic for our neighbors and businesses and called for a great comeback. Governor Tim Walz said the long road to recovery starts now and added that the impact on our economy, our schools, and people's lives won't be reversed overnight. Think about that language: recovery, catastrophic, occupation. These are words you use after a natural disaster or a military assault, not after a law enforcement operation in an American city, but that's what this was. This wasn't targeted enforcement, this was a siege, and the people who lived through it know exactly what it was. And at a Senate hearing happening today, the same day Homan made his announcement, Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison testified and said Operation Metro Surge caused real harm to the state. He called it retribution against Minnesota for its policies, its values, and how it votes.
Till now, which is, Senator, we haven't had any cooperation up until now, which is really unusual because in prior cases where there's been a federal and state interest in a crime, we've seen collaboration between federal and state authorities. It's how we normally do work. It's not unusual at all. And in fact, this situation, when we were told you can't have access to the evidence, to the crime scene, that was highly unusual and surprising to us. And so we're hoping that we can gain cooperation, perhaps in the Pretty matter, but we've been advised that the good matter is the feds are not investigating it, and we still haven't received any access to the evidence that is involved in that case. So it's an unusual, strange situation, but
It is.
With good faith, hoping that things will change.
So that's important. You're saying in the past they
Let that sink in. The state's top law enforcement officer is telling the United States Senate that the federal government launched a military-style operation against his state as political punishment because of how they vote. This is not something that happens in a democracy. That is something that happens in an authoritarian regime that punishes dissent. And of course, Republicans are spinning this completely different. Congressman Tom Emmer, who's from Minnesota, testified at the same hearing and blamed the whole thing on radical sanctuary state and city policies, and said Minnesota turned into a safe haven for criminal illegal aliens. So here's the bottom line. They're leaving the Minneapolis not because the mission was accomplished, they're leaving because the mission was a disaster. 2 Americans are dead. The 14% number destroyed their narrative. Congress demanded answers. The ICE chief got humiliated at a hearing. And every day this operation continued, more Americans turned against it. So Homan holds a press conference, says, I don't want to see any more bloodshed, and acts like he's the hero. But he's not for sure. But the bloodshed was his. The chaos was his. And no amount of victory lap press conferences is going to change that. If you found the video informative, and if you liked the video and subscribe to my channel, for sure, comment down below, please. Thank you so much.